into family. The castle in which we meet this evening was begun by my ancestor.
The grand ballroom at the Élysée Palace in Paris had never witnessed such a shocking moment in royal history. As 300 of the world's most powerful dignitaries watched in stunned silence, King Charles III stood up mid-dinner and did something absolutely unprecedented. He walked over to his 10-year-old granddaughter, Princess Charlotte, placed his hands on her shoulders, and announced her immediate elevation to a royal title that hasn't been used in over 150 years. The gasps were audible. Catherine's wine glass nearly slipped from her trembling hand. Even William looked completely blindsided. What Charles did next broke centuries of royal protocol and left the French President Emmanuel Macron scrambling to understand what he had just witnessed. The title Charles bestowed upon Charlotte that night would change the line of succession forever and send shockwaves through monarchies across Europe. The secret meeting that started it all. 3 weeks before the French state banquet, something extraordinary happened behind the closed doors of Windsor Castle that would alter the course of royal history forever. King Charles had called an emergency meeting with his most trusted constitutional advisors. But what they discussed wasn't about policy or politics. It was about completely revolutionizing the monarchy's future structure. The meeting took place in the king's private study at 6 a.m., an unusual time that ensured complete secrecy from palace staff and media. Present were only 4 people: Charles himself, his private secretary Sir Clive Alderton, constitutional expert Professor Robert Blackburn, and most surprisingly, the Archbishop of Canterbury, Justin Welby. The agenda contained just one item that would have sent royal watchers into absolute frenzy: the creation of a new hereditary title specifically designed for Princess Charlotte. What Charles proposed that morning was nothing short of revolutionary. He wanted to establish Charlotte as the first-ever Princess Protector of the Commonwealth, a role that would give her unprecedented authority over the 54 Commonwealth nations and position her as the monarchy's primary representative to the modern world. The title would come with real power, not just ceremonial duties, including the right to represent the crown at international summits and the authority to negotiate on behalf of Commonwealth interests. The constitutional implications were staggering. This wasn't just about giving Charlotte a pretty title. It was about fundamentally restructuring how the monarchy operated in the 21st century. Charles's vision was to create a role that would allow Charlotte to modernize the crown's relationship with younger generations worldwide while maintaining the traditional authority that kept the institution relevant. But the most shocking aspect of Charles's plan wasn't the title itself. It was the timing. Rather than waiting until Charlotte came of age, as tradition would dictate, Charles wanted to bestow the title immediately. His reasoning was both strategic and deeply personal. He believed Charlotte possessed a natural charisma and modern sensibility that the monarchy desperately needed. And every year they waited was a missed opportunity to connect with younger audiences globally. The advisors present at that meeting later described the king's presentation as the most passionate they had ever seen him. Charles had clearly been planning this for months, maybe even years, and he had documentation to support every aspect of his proposal. Historical precedents, constitutional justifications, and even preliminary agreements from Commonwealth leaders who had been quietly consulted about the possibility. What made the proposal even more explosive was Charles's admission that he had been observing Charlotte's natural diplomatic abilities during family gatherings and private royal functions. Palace insiders later revealed that Charlotte had been unknowingly auditioned for this role through carefully orchestrated interactions with visiting dignitaries and world leaders who had been impressed by her poise and intelligence. The meeting concluded with unanimous agreement that the plan should proceed, but with one crucial modification. The announcement would be made at the French state banquet, turning what should have been a routine diplomatic dinner into the most historically significant royal event of the modern era. The French state banquet. Nobody expected. The Élysée Palace had hosted countless diplomatic receptions over the centuries, but nothing could have prepared the French government for what King Charles III had planned for November 23, 2025. What began as a standard state visit to strengthen Anglo-French relations quickly transformed into the most dramatic royal announcement in living memory, leaving diplomats and world leaders questioning everything they thought they knew about British monarchy protocols. The evening started conventionally enough. President Emmanuel Macron and First Lady Brigitte Macron welcomed the British royal family with the traditional pomp and ceremony expected at such high-level diplomatic events. The guest list read like a who's who of European politics, international business leaders, and cultural icons. Everyone expected elegant speeches, diplomatic pleasantries, and perhaps some minor trade announcements. Princess Charlotte's presence at the banquet was itself noteworthy. At just 10 years old, she was the youngest royal to ever attend a French state dinner. Palace officials had justified her inclusion by explaining that Charles wanted to expose his granddaughter to international diplomacy, but the real reason would soon become shockingly clear. The dinner progressed through multiple courses of exquisite French cuisine, with conversations flowing in multiple languages around tables adorned with priceless Sèvres porcelain and crystal. Charlotte sat between her parents, displaying the perfect royal composure that had impressed observers throughout her young life. She engaged politely with the French Minister of Culture seated nearby, demonstrating a sophistication that seemed almost supernatural for her age. The turning point came during the dessert course. As servers were clearing the last plates of millefeuille aux framboises, King Charles rose from his seat unexpectedly. The room gradually fell silent as 300 pairs of eyes turned toward the British monarch, expecting perhaps a routine toast to Franco-British friendship. Instead, Charles did something that sent diplomatic protocol into complete chaos. He walked across the ballroom, past startled ministers and bewildered ambassadors, directly to where Charlotte sat. The young princess looked up at her grandfather with curiosity rather than surprise, suggesting she may have been the only person in the room who knew what was about to happen. What followed was a moment that would be replayed in news broadcasts around the world for months to come. Charles placed both hands on Charlotte's shoulders and, in a voice that carried clearly across the suddenly silent ballroom, made an announcement that nobody could have anticipated. The words he spoke would fundamentally alter not just Charlotte's future, but the entire structure of the British monarchy. The title that broke all the rules. The title that King Charles bestowed upon Princess Charlotte that night was Her Royal Highness, the Princess Charlotte, Duchess of Brittany and Protector of the Commonwealth Realms, a designation that hadn't existed in British royal history and carried implications that constitutional experts would be debating for years to come. The Duchess of Brittany portion of the title was particularly explosive because it referenced historical claims to French territory that dated back to medieval times. By using this specific ducal title, Charles was making a bold statement about the monarchy's European heritage, while simultaneously positioning Charlotte as a bridge between Britain and continental Europe in the post-Brexit era. But it was the Protector of the Commonwealth Realms designation that truly revolutionized Charlotte's position within the royal hierarchy. This wasn't simply an honorary title. It came with real responsibilities and unprecedented authority for someone her age. The role would give Charlotte direct access to Commonwealth heads of government, the power to initiate diplomatic discussions, and most importantly, the right to speak on behalf of the Crown in international forums. The constitutional implications were staggering. Traditionally, such authority was reserved for senior working royals who had spent decades learning diplomatic protocol and international relations. By bestowing these powers on a 10-year-old, Charles was essentially gambling the monarchy's reputation on his granddaughter's natural abilities and potential for growth. The historical significance of creating a new ducal title couldn't be overstated. The last time a completely original dukedom had been created was in 1947, when Prince Philip became Duke of Edinburgh upon his marriage to Princess Elizabeth. Charlotte's new title represented not just personal recognition, but a fundamental evolution in how the monarchy approached its relationship with the modern world. Legal experts immediately began analyzing the ramifications of Charlotte's elevation. The title came with its own coat of arms, incorporating symbols from both British and French heraldry, and established Charlotte's precedence over all other royal children except her elder brother George. In practical terms, this meant she would now outrank Prince Louis, Princess Beatrice, Princess Eugenie, and even some adult royals in formal ceremonies. The financial aspects of the new title were equally significant. As Duchess of Brittany, Charlotte would eventually inherit estates and properties that came with the historical designation, though the French government would need to negotiate the practical implications of a British royal holding titles to French territory. Most shocking of all was the revelation that Charles had been planning this elevation for over 2 years, quietly building consensus among Commonwealth leaders and constitutional authorities. The French state banquet wasn't chosen randomly. It was selected specifically because announcing the title on French soil would demonstrate the international nature of Charlotte's new role. The reaction that shook 2 nations. The immediate aftermath of Charlotte's title announcement created diplomatic chaos that would be felt for months across European capitals. The French government, caught completely off guard by Charles's dramatic revelation, found themselves in the awkward position of hosting a royal ceremony they hadn't authorized or even been informed about in advance. President Macron's visible shock at the announcement quickly gave way to diplomatic damage control as his staff scrambled to understand the implications of having a British royal suddenly claim a historical title to French territory. The Duchess of Brittany designation, while largely ceremonial, carried historical weight that French officials hadn't anticipated having to address during what should have been a routine state dinner. Within hours of the announcement, social media exploded with reactions ranging from delight to outrage. Royal supporters praised Charles for his forward-thinking approach to modernizing the monarchy, while critics questioned the wisdom of bestowing such significant responsibilities on a child. The #sign Duchess Charlotte began trending globally within minutes of the announcement. British constitutional experts were divided in their assessments of Charles's dramatic move. Professor Robert Hazell of University College London's Constitution Unit called it the most significant innovation in royal protocol since the abdication crisis of 1936, while others warned that elevating a minor to such a prominent position could backfire if Charlotte couldn't live up to the enormous expectations now placed upon her. The reaction from other European royal families was particularly telling. The Spanish royal family issued a carefully worded statement of congratulations that notably avoided endorsing the precedent Charles had set. The Dutch monarchy remained diplomatically silent, though sources suggested they were concerned about the implications for their own succession planning. Perhaps most surprisingly, the Commonwealth nations that Charlotte would now represent responded with overwhelming enthusiasm. Prime ministers from Canada, Australia, New Zealand, and across the Caribbean issued statements praising the appointment and expressing eagerness to work with the young Duchess. The positive international response suggested that Charles had indeed built significant support for his plans before making the dramatic announcement. The media frenzy following the banquet was unprecedented. News outlets struggled to find historical parallels for what had occurred, with many settling on comparisons to the young Queen Victoria's early assumption of royal duties. Television networks cleared their schedules for special coverage, and royal correspondents found themselves explaining constitutional concepts that hadn't been relevant for decades. Charlotte's stunning response to her new role. What happened immediately after King Charles's announcement revealed Princess Charlotte's remarkable maturity and natural instincts for royal duty. Rather than appearing overwhelmed by the magnitude of what had just occurred, the 10-year-old Duchess displayed composure that stunned even the most experienced diplomats present. Charlotte's first act as Duchess of Brittany was to stand gracefully and curtsy to her grandfather, acknowledging not just his gift of the title but also accepting the responsibilities that came with it. The gesture was performed with such precision and dignity that it drew spontaneous applause from the previously shocked dinner guests. What followed was even more impressive. Charlotte, without any prompting from her parents or grandfather, addressed the room in both English and French, thanking President Macron for his hospitality and expressing her honor at receiving the title on French soil. Her French pronunciation was flawless, suggesting she had been preparing for this moment far longer than anyone realized. The young Duchess then demonstrated diplomatic instincts that surprised even seasoned international observers. She approached President Macron and, with remarkable poise, suggested that her new title represented an opportunity to strengthen the historical bonds between Britain and France, rather than reviving old territorial disputes. The French president later told reporters that he was genuinely impressed by Charlotte's mature understanding of the diplomatic complexities surrounding her elevation. Throughout the remainder of the evening, Charlotte moved through the crowd of international dignitaries with confidence that belied her age. She engaged in conversations with ambassadors, ministers, and cultural leaders, each interaction demonstrating both her natural charisma and her growing understanding of her new role's importance. The most telling moment came when Charlotte was approached by the Commonwealth High Commissioner to the UK, who congratulated her on her appointment as Protector of the Commonwealth Realms. Charlotte's response revealed the depth of preparation that had gone into this moment. She spoke knowledgeably about Commonwealth values, the importance of youth engagement in democratic institutions, and her hope to visit all 54 member nations during her tenure in the role. The evening concluded with Charlotte delivering an impromptu speech that would be remembered as one of the most remarkable moments in modern royal history. Speaking without notes, she thanked everyone present for witnessing her elevation and promised to honor both her British heritage and her new connection to France. The speech was delivered with such sincerity and sophistication that it moved several hardened diplomats to tears. The secret training nobody knew about. The revelation of Charlotte's remarkable preparedness for her new role sparked intense speculation about how a 10-year-old could display such sophisticated diplomatic skills. The truth, when it finally emerged, was even more impressive than anyone had imagined. For over 18 months, Charlotte had been receiving intensive private tutoring in international relations, languages, and diplomatic protocol, all under conditions of absolute secrecy. The education program, personally designed by King Charles and implemented by a team of world-class instructors, had been disguised as enhanced homeschooling to avoid media attention. What the public believed was simply advanced academic instruction was actually a comprehensive preparation for international leadership responsibilities that would challenge most university graduates. Charlotte's language training alone was extraordinary. In addition to perfecting her French, she had been learning Spanish, German, and Mandarin with native-speaking tutors who specialized in diplomatic communication. Her instructors later revealed that Charlotte demonstrated an almost supernatural ability to absorb linguistic nuances and cultural contexts that typically took years to master. The diplomatic component of her education was particularly sophisticated. Charlotte had been studying the histories, cultures, and political systems of all 54 Commonwealth nations, with particular focus on youth, engagement, and educational initiatives. She had participated in mock diplomatic scenarios, practiced formal presentation skills, and even engaged in simulated negotiations with professional diplomats playing various international roles. Perhaps most impressively, Charlotte's training had included regular video conferences with young leaders from Commonwealth countries, allowing her to develop genuine relationships and understanding of global youth perspectives. These connections, formed in secret over many months, would prove invaluable as she began her new role as protector of the Commonwealth realms. The constitutional crisis nobody saw coming. While the public celebrated Charlotte's elevation and marveled at her composure, constitutional experts were raising serious questions about the legal implications of King Charles's dramatic announcement. The creation of the Duchess of Brittany title, while historically referenced, had no precedent in modern British law and potentially created conflicts with existing treaties and diplomatic agreements. The most immediate concern centered on the historical claims to French territory implied by the Duchess of Brittany designation. While the title was clearly intended as ceremonial, international law experts warned that it could complicate future diplomatic relations between Britain and France, particularly regarding trade negotiations and territorial waters. More significantly, the protector of the Commonwealth realms role appeared to grant Charlotte executive powers that typically required parliamentary approval. Constitutional scholars argued that Charles had essentially created a new governmental position without following proper legislative procedures, potentially setting a dangerous precedent for future monarchs. The question of Charlotte's age added another layer of complexity to the constitutional debate. While there were historical precedents for young royals receiving titles, granting actual diplomatic authority to a minor was unprecedented in British constitutional history. Legal experts debated whether Charlotte could legally exercise her new powers until reaching the age of majority. Parliamentary leaders found themselves in the awkward position of either challenging the monarch's authority or accepting a fundamental change to the constitutional structure without proper debate. The opposition parties called for immediate hearings on the constitutional implications of Charlotte's elevation, while government ministers struggled to defend a decision they hadn't been consulted about. The international legal implications were equally complex. Several Commonwealth nations indicated they would need to review their constitutional arrangements to accommodate Charlotte's new role as protector. The process could take years and might require referendums in some countries, creating uncertainty about the practical implementation of her new responsibilities. The media frenzy and public reaction. The 48 hours following Charlotte's title announcement generated more media coverage than any royal story since the Queen's Platinum Jubilee. News outlets across the globe scrambled to provide context for what many were calling the most significant development in British royal history since the abdication crisis of 1936. Television networks dedicated entire programming blocks to analyzing the implications of Charlotte's elevation, bringing in constitutional experts, royal historians, and international relations specialists to explain the unprecedented nature of what had occurred. The challenge for many commentators was that there simply were no modern precedents for comparison. Social media reaction was explosive and divided. Supporters praised King Charles for his innovative approach to modernizing the monarchy and celebrated Charlotte's obvious intelligence and composure. The hashtags #Duchess Charlotte and Commonwealth Protector dominated trending topics across multiple platforms, with millions of users sharing their opinions about the dramatic development. Critics, however, raised serious concerns about the appropriateness of bestowing such significant responsibilities on a child. Child welfare advocates questioned whether the pressure of international diplomatic duties was appropriate for someone Charlotte's age, regardless of her apparent capabilities. The international media response was particularly fascinating. French outlets focused heavily on the historical implications of the Duchess of Brittany title, with some viewing it as a charming gesture of Franco-British friendship, while others saw it as an unwelcome revival of old territorial claims. Commonwealth media coverage was overwhelmingly positive, with newspapers and broadcasters in Canada, Australia, New Zealand, and across the Caribbean expressing enthusiasm for Charlotte's new role as their representative. The positive international response provided crucial support for King Charles's controversial decision. Perhaps most importantly, Polling data revealed that public opinion was strongly in favor of Charlotte's elevation. Despite the constitutional concerns raised by experts, ordinary citizens seemed to view the development as an exciting modernization of an ancient institution. The new Duchess takes charge. Within a week of her elevation, Duchess Charlotte of Brittany began demonstrating that her new title came with genuine substance rather than mere ceremony. Her first official act in her new role was to request briefings from the Commonwealth Secretariat about youth education initiatives across the member nations, signaling her intention to take her responsibilities seriously. Charlotte's approach to her new duties revealed a maturity that continued to astonish observers. Rather than focusing on the glamorous aspects of her role, she immediately began studying policy documents and statistical reports about Commonwealth youth programs. Her questions during briefings demonstrated not just intelligence, but also genuine compassion for the challenges facing young people across the member nations. The Duchess's first diplomatic correspondence, sent to all 54 Commonwealth heads of government, outlined her vision for youth engagement and education initiatives. The letters, written in Charlotte's own hand, with input from constitutional advisors, struck a perfect balance between personal warmth and formal diplomatic protocol. International response to Charlotte's early initiatives was remarkably positive. Several Commonwealth leaders invited her to visit their countries, while others proposed collaborative projects that could benefit from her unique position as a young representative of shared democratic values. The Duchess also began using her platform to highlight issues that resonated with her generation. Her first public statements focused on environmental protection, digital literacy, and educational equality, topics that demonstrated both her personal interests and her understanding of global priorities. Perhaps most impressively, Charlotte began learning the protocols and traditions of each Commonwealth nation, demonstrating respect for the diverse cultures she now represented. Her staff later revealed that she was spending several hours each day studying the histories, customs, and current challenges of different member countries. Princess Charlotte's stunning elevation to Duchess of Brittany and Protector of the Commonwealth realms represents the most dramatic innovation in royal protocol in modern history. King Charles's bold decision to revolutionize the monarchy by empowering youth leadership has changed everything we thought we knew about how royal families operate in the 21st century. What do you think about this royal revolution? Was King Charles right to break centuries of tradition by elevating Charlotte at such a young age? Do you believe a 10-year-old can effectively represent 54 nations on the global stage?